Andy. Come here. Alright, so we got a very special KyleCast today. It's the KyleCast with Sandra Salazar. Sandra and I have known each other a long time, about 4 years. One of my closest friends. Sandra's a lot of things. She's a homeowner, student assistant, student teacher.
Student administrator.
Student administrator at Ann Webb Skin Clinic. But more than anything, I know Sandra as real life Pocahontas. Friend to all animals and especially dogs. So welcome.
Thank you.
And this is Nina here. And this one, that's Andy, aka Chappelle.
As seen on an earlier photo shoot?
Yes, yes, I'll have to release those pictures still. That was a great photo shoot. So, why don't we just get started? I do want to make this mostly about dogs. Tell me when your love for dogs started.
It started with Nina because she's my first dog. Growing up, we always had cats. And cats are great, they're loving, but cats are very independent. They come to you when they want to. It's all on their terms, play with you when they want to. And Nina was a street dog, so I didn't even go out searching for a dog. She just kind of came to us. Me and my sister would see her out on the street, we'd feed her hot dogs, and that's how we got her to come to us. And she would just start coming around more, and then one day we just snatched her up. And we waited to see if people would put up signs for them, or lost signs, and nobody ever did. So that's when I took her to get spayed, to get fixed, and that whole process, that's when I just started to fall in love with her, and I knew that I wasn't going to let her go. And I realized that they just have so much love, and the difference from a street dog that Nina was, Andy came from a breeder. I didn't buy him from a breeder. I would never do that, but they're very different in their attitudes, and I'm sure you notice their attitudes are very different.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's very grateful. She knows what she has, and so that just totally did it for me. I was in love. And
wow. How long ago was that?
10 years ago.
10 years ago you got Nina.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you see her on the street, like feeding her hot dogs and all that, before you made a move and helped her out?
I would say about maybe a week or two. We would see her, and then we wouldn't see her for a day or two, and then either my mom or my sister would see her. And then my mom said, hey, she almost got hit by a car crossing the street over here, because we live kind of on a busy street, and she was trying to come over to us, and so that's when we realized we had to do something.
How old was Nina at the time?
When we took her to the vet, they said she was approximately a year old.
And what kind of shape was she in at the time?
She looked okay, and we could tell that she was owned by somebody because she knew the sit command. She was potty trained. There were some things that she did do street dog, like she would hide her food. My sister would have piles of clothes on the ground, and when she would finally go to do laundry, she'd find pieces of meat hidden in her clothes. So that's a street dog thing.
Afraid that she would never eat again.
Correct. She had to hide
as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And actually, you talk a lot about too that she's the eldest dog, so the other ones learn from her. Yes. And doesn't Andy kind of do the same thing?
Yes.
He learned that from her.
He learned a lot from her. Andy, he came from a very bad situation. He was, the people that owned him, I don't think they wanted a dog. He was given to her as a gift. And a dog isn't really something you give as a gift like that. And so he didn't know how to play with toys. He didn't know how to be on a leash. I actually put a leash on him and tied him to one of the other dogs, and I broke him down like a wild horse. It was really funny because he was actually bucking.
How did you come upon Andy?
A lady, when I worked at Fort Worth ISD, she was a nurse. And of all people, a nurse who's supposed to be nurturing and caring, he was in terrible shape. He smelled like urine. He was malnourished. The doctor said that maybe a week or two more he would have died of dehydration.
Wow.
His ears were falling apart, like you would pull off the tip and little pieces would come off. He had to be on steroids for a couple months to get his immune system back up. She was feeding him people food. And the reason she didn't want him was because he was peeing and pooping all over the place. So that's going to happen when you feed a dog human food. They're going to pee and poop everywhere. And so she was going to take him to the pound. And I said, don't take him to the pound. I'll take him. I'll find a home for him. But I didn't realize how bad a shape he was when I got him. And again, in that time, getting him fixed and getting him better, I just fell in love with him and I couldn't give him up anymore.
Now, how many times has this happened to you where you've taken an animal in, maybe from the street or bad situations?
Total for me and I say me and my mom because her and I collected this many dogs.
How many?
Together 7 times. Okay, no, 6 times because Tom, we found his mom pregnant and then she had Tom. So 6 times.
But you don't want to count Tom because he was a baby that you ended up nursing, but he was even one of the worst ones, wasn't he?
He was. He was a whole experience that I had never gone through.
So tell that, starting with Princess.
Princess, we found also on my street. My mom and I were coming back home from walking the dogs. We were probably walking Nina, Andy, and Koshka. And we see this little dog at our next door neighbors just sniffing around. And she was limping and she was fat. I didn't know at the time she was pregnant, but she just looked fat. And so we put our dogs inside and then my mom and I came back out and I went to pick her up and she came right to me. Like she didn't have any problems me picking her up. And then that's when I realized she was pregnant. She was wearing a collar, but she didn't have tags on. And so we brought her inside and she just started drinking water. Like, so she was so thirsty. And we fed her. And again, we waited to see if anybody would put any signs up or anything, and nothing happened. But then a week later, she gave birth to Tom. And she actually had 2 babies. The other one was a stillborn, and we think maybe she was kicked or possibly hit by a car. That's why she was limping when we found her.
Damn.
Yeah. So
why does this happen? Why does this keep happening? Why are their dogs in such bad shape?
I think it's people getting them as puppies because they're cute and they want something for their kids, or they give them as gifts like Andy was. And people just don't realize when you get a puppy, it's a baby. They're gonna pee and poop all over the place. They were crate trained when I first got them because that was just the best thing for them. If not, especially her, even though she was potty trained to a certain point, it was still free range, she was always in the street. And so people don't realize their responsibility. It's a great point. And I wanted to actually ask you about that again, but you already brought it up. You said twice now that people should not give pets as gifts. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, why that happens and what that leads to? It seems to be always holidays. Like I always see on the different shelters that I like on Facebook, it's during the holidays, during Christmas time, during birthdays. They always say, a puppy is not a gift. Give a stuffed animal. Yeah. It's a gift for life. It's not something that you just have for a little while and then you get bored of it. And people will they'll run away and won't look for them, or they'll get out because they don't have the proper yard or the proper enclosure for them, and they don't care that they got out. I started volunteering at the shelter a couple years ago, and that's when I really realized that people don't care, because you could easily go there and look for your dog, and there's so many people that just don't. Right. So what you're talking about there, I think, is a situation where somebody gets a pet, maybe as a gift, or maybe just because they think they can handle it. The honeymoon period of, this thing is so cute, wears off, and now, it's cute, but it's something to handle. And something else that I wanted to ask you about specifically was, how much does a dog hinder your daily life in ways like you have to be back every few hours to let the dog out? And that's something that people don't realize, especially going away for trips too. So can you talk about how much of a responsibility is having 8 dogs or 7 dogs or however many you have? Well, it affected me going to the shelter, because recently my living situation changed. My mom isn't at home all day to take care of them, and so I had to make a choice: either get off of work and go walk other dogs, or go home and take care of my dogs. And that's why I haven't been to the shelter, because I don't have. I feel bad. They'd be okay. Of course they'd be fine because they're inside the house, they have food and water, but it's not fair to them to be alone for 12 hours a day.
And that's why I call you Pocahontas too, because listen to that. You have to take time off from helping dogs to help dogs. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And I volunteered once with you. Steve and I went and volunteered with you. What's the name of the shelter, just so we have it?
Austin Animal Center.
Austin Animal Center. And it's worse than I thought. I didn't know what to expect walking in, but I didn't realize how many dogs are there. Could you talk a little bit about the reality of that situation? How many dogs there are? How many are likely to get adopted? What is the future of most of those dogs?
Fortunately, there at the shelter, they have a really high adoption rate.
They do.
And a very low euthanasia rate. And because they work with a lot of groups, when they're overflowing, they'll get other groups to take them. But what you saw were the big dogs, and I think those are the hardest ones to find homes for. You saw a lot of older dogs.
Yeah.
Because people don't want older dogs. Even when they are going in to adopt, they still want a younger dog that will grow up with their kids, a younger dog that will get used to their family. It's so much harder for these older big dogs to find homes. But fortunately, they work with a lot of these groups. There's this one group called Canine Classics, and that's all they do is they go to shelters, pick up old dogs, because they know that they're not going to either ever leave the shelter or they just end up passing away there. And the shelter is very good about not just euthanizing just because. That's why they reach out to these groups. They only euthanize if they're really sick and it's, in the best health interest of the dog, or if the dog is just a threat to, the community. It's just not going to be a good fit with either a good family or with another dog.
Okay. Because
of their history that they've had.
So just so I understand, you said there's a high percentage of adoptions. Is that just for the small dogs, or is that for all dogs in general there?
The percentage is a lot higher for small dogs. I was walking dogs, it was rare for me to see the same dog in a month. Like I'd see him for a couple weeks and then he'd be gone. And then a whole bunch of new dogs would come. And that's when I realized how much people just don't care, because they're constantly coming in. It's just non-stop. They'll have these days where they'll do free adoptions to get rid of all the dogs, and they get rid of 70-80% of them. And now then a few weeks later,
the same ones come
they're
back
at capacity.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, and what you're talking about there, about dogs being euthanized because their threat level's high, that was something that really interested me going to the shelter. Was me being a first-time volunteer, I'm only allowed to interact with a certain group of the dogs. And at that certain shelter, they're grouped by colors. So if you see a green circle, that means the dog is relatively friendly and okay for anyone to handle. If you see a blue, that's somebody more experienced is needed. I think you're able to handle the blues, right? And then the reds, would you even handle the reds? So that's the high-level threat.
And really only staff is supposed to. Because of the possibility of somebody getting bitten, and they don't want to have that liability of a non-employee getting bitten. As an employee working at a shelter, I guess it kind of comes with the territory. So they don't want the public or volunteers being at risk to get bitten. And I wouldn't handle them because I never walked the big dogs. I just can't handle them. A 70, 80-pound dog is going to drag me. And I'm gonna either hurt myself or the dog's gonna get hurt. So
what happens with a red tag dog then? Is anyone ever gonna adopt them?
If it's really that bad and they've gone through training and they've tried to put the dog through, they'll put them in foster homes too to just try and get them out of the environment, because the shelter environment is very stressful. And if they've just gone through all those different possibilities and it's not working, then they will be put down.
Well, actually, what I was realizing too during this and other points of the conversation, dogs are just like humans. Those red dogs are just like people on death row. Yeah, some people aren't meant for society
Shouldn't
either.
Be out there.
Yeah.
No.
But the problem I think that you're getting at is that people look at dogs as different than humans, and we care less in general because of them. We think that dogs don't deserve as much love or attention, right? And that's I consider myself kind of lucky to have dodge the pet trap myself, because I know I'm not responsible enough for a pet at the moment.
I think you know what's best, and that's why you haven't gotten a dog, because you would feel bad. At the same time, though, there are things that you can do. Like, you can go walk them. You can do foster also. As a foster, you just have the pet for a little while, pretty much until it gets adopted. So, and the shelter pays for pretty much almost everything. So is it better?
Like, I'm talking about for...
I don't think so.
Yeah. Let's say someone's a really bad dog owner, but they say, well, it's better that I have them than they're in the shelter. Does that make sense?
I could see where they think that, but I don't think it's better. I don't think it's a better situation if they're malnourished or never see the light of day because they never go outside. I know euthanasia is a really sad thing, but I'm totally for it. I think it's better for a dog to get euthanized instead of getting hit by a car, or starving to death, or being eaten by wild animals.
I'm for it too. I'm for it with people too, but that's a whole different thing.
I wish more people were euthanized, yes.
If a lot of people were euthanized, the world would be a better place.
Yes.
So one thing I definitely wanted to ask you about was, you've been a dog owner for so long and you've had so many dogs. What are some things that you've learned along the way that everybody should know, but maybe a lot of people don't?
Patience. Especially now as Nina is getting older and she's dealing with, things that people deal with when they're getting older too. I mean, her equivalent age is 70, so being patient with her when she starts coughing, her medicine, just knowing that they completely rely on you, and so you have to be able to commit yourself to that. And the patience of cleaning up pee, cleaning up poop, cleaning up throw up. I went through a stage with her where she wouldn't eat her food, so I had to try different foods for her. So just different things that people go through with kids. I'm sure parents have that too, that huge amount of patience dealing with kids.
But people will prepare in a different way. They'll even read
Correct.
books. They'll be like, how to be a parent, and they'll study it. But with dogs, people don't seem to do that as much anyway, right? And that's a great point, though. Patience, and also understanding that if you buy a dog, you're buying a life, and that life will mature into old age. And like you said, Nina's dealing with old age problems. That's what happens. I was on Reddit the other day. I was reading something about pets, and it was kind of the same sentiment that you're getting at. Be careful. It's a responsibility. And somebody said the average pet costs something like $12,000 over the lifetime of the pet. Does that kind of sync up? Like, have you had to spend significant amounts of money?
As she's gotten older, yes. I mean, just their regular maintenance. I mean, their food is about $50 a month. And then their flea medicine is $13 per dog per month. So, yeah. And now, since her doctor's visits, it's been a total about $600 that I've spent. Fortunately, now that she's done with her x-rays and done with the big part of it, it'll just be probably about $50 a month for her medicine, but she's pretty much has to be on that medicine for the rest of her life. So I could totally see that. I should really keep a tab of how much I spend on them a year.
How much
I
they owe you?
I wish I could get them Social Securities, like
for dogs?
illegals do, so I could claim them on my taxes.
You can get dog insurance though, can't you? Dog health insurance?
Yeah, they have that, but maybe for an older dog like her, it'd be worth it. But it's also, I'm paying a premium each month.
Yeah.
And with him, he rarely goes to the doctor.
Well,
if the dog is fine, it's like us with insurance. We pay insurance, car insurance, and we use it, here and there.
And I think no matter what, we kind of prove the point that dogs do cost money too. And that was, that you brought up food. That's a recurring cost. You have to keep your pets healthy. So again, that's something to think about. It's not just patience, but it's also a financial responsibility. And then you can get kind of pigeonholed into weird situations like Steve, when we were living in Denver, he was working more than 40 hours a week at his job.
That's right.
And he kind of had dogs thrust on him. It was kind of a gift situation, actually. But either way, it was an impossible situation for him, and he had to get doggy daycare.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that a lot of people have to do.
Yeah.
A lot of people have careers, they have busy lives, and they also have dogs. Well, who's going to take care of the dog all day?
Mm-hmm.
Doggy daycare. And I know Steve was paying, I think maybe more than he was paying for rent. He was paying at doggy daycare for
like
two
$20
dogs.
a day.
I
So
think
add
that's what
that
it
up.
was.
Mhm.
Yeah, for two dogs, $20 a day. So that's another thing. If you're considering getting a dog and you don't have one, make sure you understand the lifestyle
Right.
commitments, like on a daily basis. Are you going to have time to? And if you're not, are you ready to pay the doggy daycare cost? Because that's rough too.
Well, yeah, Steve had a choice there. He could have easily said, you know what, no, I'm about to embark on this huge life change. I can't do this. But he didn't. He was responsible, he sucked it up and did what he needed for his dogs.
Absolutely, that's a really good example too, and that's a point of responsibility. That was a really difficult choice that happened because the dogs were in his life, and he chose, and that's the situation you're talking about. Those dogs could have gone to the shelter because
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about somebody that's in a tough situation. A lot of people would have done that, and now you've got
That
dogs
would
in a
have been
shelter.
the easy way
Yeah.
out. And that's what you see a lot at the shelter, or these groups that I see on Facebook of families moving. It's like, what, you're moving to where there's not going to be a room for your dog? I think that's just one of the stupidest reasons.
So you think it's like a cop out? People
Yeah,
see a quick,
totally.
easy way to unload their dogs, and people will just accept it. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually how we have one of our cats. My mom's old boss was moving, and they were taking it to the shelter, and they had this cat for like 7 years, and she's like, what? You're taking it to the shelter? It's like, yeah, we're moving. We don't know that we can handle the cats. Like, where are you moving to? So she took the cat. She's like, no, don't take the cat to the shelter. And sure enough, they ended up getting another cat later on after they settled in. It's like, how do you just do that? I don't get it.
Yeah, that's some sort of kind of interesting detachment.
Right.
You have to actually see that cat as a non-caring, something that you don't have to care about. It's really...
It's almost like you didn't really love it.
It's
or
cold-hearted.
something.
Yeah, it's a
I
little
don't know.
cold-hearted.
Yeah.
So I've actually dealt with a few dog issues in the past few weeks that have given me problems, and I wanted to present them as just situations and see what an expert might say. So the first one, this happened with both Rex and Nuka. Steve's got two dogs. One's a Weimaraner and one's a Husky Shepherd mix, and I run with them. And the last week, I realized that I might have been running them in weather that was too hot. So the first problem I encountered was I was running with Nuka, and she seemed like she was too hot. But when I took her to the water fountain, she wouldn't drink the water. So I've got a dog that's seemingly overheating with no way to cool her down, and I'm halfway through the run. What do you suggest in a situation like that? Are there any helpful things?
I think the best would be pour the water on her, get it in her fur, get it into her skin. I know Nina, if she smells another dog has drank out of there, she does not want it.
Mm.
I've taken her to the dog park before. It's really hot and she's panting. She's drooling a little bit because she's panting so much, and there's a bowl of water there, but she sniffs it and then she walks away.
Wow, that's super interesting.
She's super picky, so I'm sure Nuka's like that. So I'll just soak her. Like, okay, you're not going to drink it, then I'm going to soak her. Putting it on their belly too will cool them down a lot, underneath their armpits and stuff. So it's probably better, especially for her, even though you want to take her out, it's just so hot with that coat. I mean, I wouldn't imagine running with my hair down. And that's just this little piece of hair covering me. So it's really good that you are going out with her, but maybe on those really hot days, it'd be better for Rex to go out.
It can be frustrating for dog owners, and that's because what I was thinking about is you can't communicate, you can't find out what the problem is, right? So a lot of people will have a problem with their dog. Like you said, you had to try all these different foods with Nina, and that can be frustrating because you can't get any feedback, right? So that's what I experienced. I just wanted to mention that, how it can be very frustrating if you want to solve the problem, but the dog won't help you solve the problem.
Like, you're thirsty, why aren't you drinking?
Yeah, so Nuka's got another one that
and you felt bad for
her. Exactly. So you said maybe I should run with Rex, but then I encountered a different problem with Rex the next day. So it was actually 2 days in a row that I hurt both of the dogs. Sorry, Rex and Nuka. But the first day, I think Nuka was dehydrated, and I couldn't help her. She ended up getting back in rough shape. But also, I wanted to mention that somebody else along the way helped me and told me that if there is a body of water that you can let the dog go into, it's exactly like you said. Dogs cool down through their extremities.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's water that you can bring your dog to and they're overheating, put them in the water, and that's even better than them drinking water,
right,
I suppose. But the next day when I took Rex, I don't think he was dehydrated. I think his paws got hurt. So do you see a lot of people making that mistake? What mistake are they making on hot days, especially in Texas?
They always say if you can't walk barefoot, your dogs can't walk barefoot either. And yeah, their pads are thicker, and they have, the ability to withstand the concrete, but if it's hot, it's gonna burn it no matter what. It's like you said, 110 degrees outside. I can't even imagine what that concrete is.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that, I'm not maliciously trying to hurt Rex, but I didn't even think of it. And you're right, like, it's 110 degrees out, but when I go out, I'm wearing shoes, so I don't feel how hot the ground is. I don't even think about it. But if I took my shoes off, that would hurt. And if I'm running Rex for 4 miles on a hot pavement, it's bad. His hands his paws got torn up. So that's, I learned from my mistake. If it's too hot out, just maybe leave the dog at home.
They do have booties for them.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd be very uncomfortable at first, but they do get used to them. They're just these little booties that you put on them, and it's protection for their feet. So if it's something you want to try because you are running during the day, it's definitely worth it.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah. People are starting to care more about dogs, and I think still a lot of them are mistreated, but I think dogs are accepted more as part of the family. You see people caring for them differently. Strollers. We never saw doggy strollers when we were little, and now it's something, and I always thought it was ridiculous, and now I think, like, when Nina can't walk, I'm going to put her in a fucking stroller.
Yeah, you would too.
So you see some signs out there. I think I was on the trail, and it said, be careful with your dogs, it's too hot. So you start to see a little more attention being paid to the dogs,
And especially here too, right?
Right.
We're in Austin, Texas, and you can take your dogs a lot of places that you normally couldn't take them in other parts of the country. Do you think that's part of why the small dogs get taken more too? Is that a regional thing? Do people like small dogs more in Texas?
I think they're just easier to manage. Easier in an apartment, especially here in Austin. Apartments are constantly being built and people are constantly moving here, so I think it's an easier dog to have. But also, y'all dealt with this. German Shepherds are considered aggressive dogs. I don't know if Weimaraner's are.
They can be.
Yeah.
It seems like so what
almost
you're talking about there.
Breed. So if these people, even if they don't live in an apartment, if they rent, it's still going to be a liability. When I got my homeowner's insurance, they asked me if I had dogs, and so I said Chihuahuas. He's like, okay, Chihuahuas aren't on the list. Although Chihuahuas probably bite more people than bigger dogs. But I would think that that's another reason why the big one or the small ones get taken over the little ones.
That's something that people might not know too. Not initiated in the apartment world or the dog world. A lot of times, actually, insurance companies. That's what you just said. Insurance companies. These organizations have lists of aggressive breeds when they decide how much you're going to pay extra for a pet deposit, or if you can even have pets if you're moving into an apartment. And they have different lists, actually. Like the Metropolis, where we live here, had a different list from a place across the street. But like you're saying, German Shepherds are very often an aggressive breed, and Weimaraners were somewhere else, but not here.
I guess it's all in the insurance company. Whoever they have, whoever the apartment uses, it's all on there. But it goes to show there's no consistency.
Yeah. So if you're moving and you have a dog, or you're thinking about getting a dog, be aware that that is an issue that you might encounter. Any other sorts of unexpected things that come up, and what would you have told yourself? What would you have hoped to know in a situation? Did you encounter any tough situations?
I never thought I would have Chihuahuas. I always liked big dogs, blue heelers, German Shepherds. I would have never thought. I would not have gone out to get a small dog. They just came to me. So I think be open if you do want an animal and you are ready for that responsibility. Be open to, all sizes. You too, you told me these are your first small dogs that you experienced, and because you always had golden retriever.
Yeah, I had a golden retriever growing up. So yeah, that's a good point.
Very different.
People seem to just kind of, maybe I did anyway, but they want what they had. Mm-hmm. So if you grew up with big dogs, maybe you think you want big dogs, but be open.
That's or you're point. A man, like you don't want to walk around with a small little fluffy dog.
Yeah.
So just be open to all the possibilities out there. I didn't realize I would love them this much.
That's awesome.
But it's a great surprise. It's a great learning experience. I do think, though, as they're getting older, and I'm going to have to go through this, 5 times, I do realize that I probably won't get many more dogs after this because it is a lot of work.
How can you be sure about that? Why do you think that?
I just don't think I'll have so many. I think that. But of course, if somebody comes to my door and says, hey, this dog is being mistreated,
yeah,
it would be hard for me to say no.
So the real question is, are you a crazy dog lady, or did this many dogs just get thrust into your life?
This many dogs got thrust into my life, but I embrace crazy dog lady.
You did?
100%.
Yeah. If a dog came to you in need, you weren't going to turn it away.
No. And it happened a lot of times at work. Stray dogs got there. Stray dogs that I would just pick up and I'd take them to the shelter. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure I would have had an extra dog or two if they weren't giant dogs. But all the dogs that I've taken to the shelter because I found them or they were strays have all been giant dogs, so I'm sure it would have been a different situation if they were little. You
definitely wouldn't have 7 or 8. Yeah, you made me think too that that's the way Dave got his dog too. It was the same type of circumstance. Right. And then it made me think about human relationships and how, this is cliche, but it might be true too. People always say you find love when you're not looking for it, not when you go looking for it. And that's kind of interesting. If you're going to a breeder, you're trying to get a specific type of love. You're like, oh, I love this breed, whatever it is. That's what I want. And very often people end up dissatisfied that way too, mm-hmm. because they don't. Can you talk a little bit about like purebreds and the problem with breeding?
From what I know, because of the overbreeding, they have almost made them. I guess it all depends on the breeder too. But they've almost made them like defective. Their immune systems aren't the same. Their digestive tract is super sensitive.
Is that due to incest in the breeding? Is that what it is?
I don't know. It could be. I guess that's how you get bad genes, right? Uh-huh. Incest. Or they always say overbreeding. So I'm guessing if they overbreed these 2 dogs and that happens, I guess their genes start going down. I don't know too much about that.
Yeah, we shouldn't talk too much about it if we don't know.
Right. I just know that that's what is usually the case. Not always. Andy has a super strong stomach, and he's a purebred. So
you earlier you talked about the difference in attitudes too. What kind of attitude does Andy have being a purebred, and why do you think he got that?
Not necessarily purebred because he didn't live on the streets. Like, he didn't have a rough life. Even though, yeah, he was mistreated or malnourished and all of that, but he still lived in an apartment. He didn't suffer. He always knew that there was food coming. Mm-hmm. He always knew that there was water or whatever he needed. And I don't know if it was just because he didn't have that interaction, that loving interaction. Maybe that's why he wasn't so loving towards me at the beginning. Or if it was that because he just was like, yeah, I know you're going to feed me. I don't care. Unlike
so
her,
Andy was spoiled,
yes,
you're saying.
Yeah. Unlike her, she was grateful for what she had.
She is too. She's the sweetest dog.
Sweet.
Yeah, she loves hard. Any other messages you wanted to get across?
Spay and neuter.
The Bob Barker.
Adopt, don't shop.
Adopt, don't shop. Just go a little
The
bit
thing
more
is
about
that there's so many groups now, these rescue groups that focus on certain breeds. So people think like, oh, I want a German Shepherd, I want a Pomeranian. There's Pomeranian rescues, and they'll take him out of a bad situation, and usually from breeders. So you're gonna eventually you will find a Pomeranian puppy, a litter, and the same thing, German Shepherds. You know, you can find a specific dog breed that you're looking for, because there's just so many groups now that are constantly rescuing animals that you don't have to go through a breeder that has 100 dogs back there completely mistreated to get a dog that you want.
And maybe that's actually a good test of patience too, because you're saying that you need patience to be a dog owner, and if you want a specific dog, if you're patient, you can get them through
Right.
adopting.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're saying.
Yes, I think more people are learning that there's these groups out there that are breed specific. So you will have to drive, out of the city or out of the state possibly, but like you said, if it's really worth it, then
So if that's me, if I want a Pomeranian, and I want a Pomeranian right now, how would I go about getting a Pomeranian without dealing with a breeder?
a Pomeranian rescue.
So you would Google Pomeranian
Mm-hmm.
rescue, and then you get on the list.
There's
or
a
how does that
site.
work?
There's a site that I found one time. I think it's called Texas Rescues or Texas something to do with the rescues, and it just lists all the different breed rescues in Texas. And so there's some that are breed specific, like Blue Dog Rescue. They only do blue heelers. There's another one called Wee Ones, and they're all tiny little ones. So you could definitely find a breed specific dog. There's also I think it's called Pet Finder, but that one is nationwide.
Okay.
So that one you would have to travel. But there's also these groups that I've seen will fly a dog. These pilots volunteer their time, and they will fly a dog to a certain area or to a certain home.
Wow.
Just to get a home for them. And for them, it's nothing. They're just flying because that's what they do. So that's how they volunteer their time.
That's really cool. Yeah, so I guess with a lot of the stuff we're talking about, tips for dog owners or would-be dog owners, it's just have consideration and patience in general. It's, I guess, the bad situations that you're talking about are led to impulse decisions.
Mm-hmm.
People seeing dogs as a quick idea, a quick decision, but it's not like that, and it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be a dog owner, you should not do that.
Right. Yeah, I never knew what it all entailed because, growing up with cats, and so it was just kind of thrust on me by the way she came to us, but also I didn't have to take her in, I could have just taken her to the shelter, but I was ready. I guess I wanted a dog.
Yeah.
So it all worked out really good.
Yeah, it did. She got the best home she could ever ask for. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Any other particular messages?
No.
Cool. Well, I'll hit this really light to not disturb Andy. He's always trying to relax. Thank you.
You're welcome.